Taking roll.
Hang on. Okay. So welcome everybody to the City of Santa Barbara State Street Advisory Committee.
Recording in progress.
Special meeting, agenda of June 26, 2024. We will start with the roll call. And we're going to do this with a handheld mic. Say your name and just pass it on.
Robin Elander, here.
Get some sound here.
Test. Robin Elander, here.
Mike Becker here.
Peter Lewis here.
Here.
That was Diane Black.
Was it supposed to be me? Oh, is that what we were supposed to say?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I got caught talking to Mike Jordan. Diane Black.
I got caught talking to Diane Black, Mike Jordan.
Hillary Blackerby here.
Megan Harmon, here.
Kristen Miller.
Dave Davis.
Ken Saxon.
Nadra Erman here.
Suzanne Tejada.
Kristen Snedden.
John Bauke.
Ed Lenvik here.
Kelly McAdoo.
Eli Isaacson.
Tess Harris.
Go ahead, Sarah.
I'm Sarah Clark with Public Works.
Anthony Grumbine.
Ching Xue.
Great. And Taves over there is our attorney, so she's in. Okay, thank you, everybody. Thanks for turning out on such a beautiful day and a beautiful location, as obviously. Opening remarks and announcements. I'm going to turn the mic, wherever that mic went, here you go, over to Kelly McAdoo. Welcome, Kelly, to our first SSAC meeting.
Hi everyone. I know, is it on? Okay, great. For those who don't know me, Kelly McAdoo, I am the new city administrator for Santa Barbara, and so pleased to be here. Nothing like getting thrown into the fire and being asked to provide some context-setting remarks for the State Street Advisory Committee after being here a month. So really pleased to do that, though, and wanted to just share a little bit of my observations as we get into the meeting and a little bit of what we hope to accomplish from the staff perspective and hopefully as a community as well. So for those who don't know, I've been here since about May 20th, moved to Santa Barbara at the beginning of May from Northern California. I was city manager of Hayward for 8 years in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, just south of Oakland. So for those who don't know anything about my background, but happy to be here and happy to be part of the Santa Barbara community. Just a couple sort of observations as we kick off the meeting today. I think, this has obviously been an incredibly political, divisive, controversial conversation for many years now. And I think what I have heard most clearly is a sort of decisive call to action to revitalize State Street. And I think what the challenge is that it is, sort of almost an impossible challenge to bring all of the competing interests together in a plan to move forward. And I think what I would just suggest is that none of the solutions are either or black or white, and there's ways to accomplish the different perspectives and to meet the different interests that are all sort of coming out and the different opinions around what happens on State Street. So I feel like our job as city staff is to sort of convene that conversation and to help figure out how do we reach that sort of ultimate end goal, which is revitalizing State Street, which I think is everyone's common goal. And I think if we can agree to that, that puts us and sets us up for success in a positive way. Obviously, hopefully today, I think the agenda for the committee is to try to come to some sort of consensus on some options for different segments of State Street, which will hopefully set a vision for the master plan. And I think that's really important because that'll really lay the foundation for some sort of action steps in the near term. If we don't have what that long-term vision looks like, we will just willy-nilly start doing things and it doesn't make any sense. It has no sort of rhyme or reason. There's no strategy. And I think that's really what I hope comes out of today's conversation is that vision that we can then, as staff, take to the council so that in the short term, we can start to put in place some actions to start moving State Street forward. So just my brief observations and context setting for the meeting today, and hope that's helpful. And I really excited to listen to the conversation today, to participate, and as we move forward, collaborate with all of you as we work towards our common goal of revitalizing State Street. So thank you.
Very good. As Kelly said, bringing the interest together, I want to just say thank you. Thank you to the community. The amount of input we've had both in the community engagement segment a year ago, but in the last couple months, the number of letters, when I come home and I have 100 emails in my inbox, I mean, it's saying a lot relative to people's interest in the process that we have going. So thank you to the community for all of your activity and continued interest. And again, we are gonna bring those interests together, and hopefully today we start to hear some consensus. With that, I'm gonna move to item B, staff announcements. Mr. Isaacson, Eli.
Thank you, Chair Davis. I'd like to start the staff announcements with some extremely joyful news. Sitting next to me is Tess Harris. Many of you may remember she was in pre-labor at our last SSAC meeting. Her and Tony have now welcomed their newest daughter to the family, and so we're so happy for them and so happy that she's been able to join us here today to help us with this project and with today's meeting. In less joyous news, I'd like to announce that Timmy Bolton, who has been a tremendous asset to us on this project, serving in the capacity of project planner, is moving on to a really exciting role with the city as a climate adaptation analyst with our sustainability and resiliency program or department. It's wonderful news for him, but it's been a real loss for us in this project team. And so while we're really happy to see him develop in his career, we just wanted to also acknowledge him and his contributions thus far on the project. And then lastly, if we could just advance, I think, a slide or two forward, I wanted to run through a brief timeline of where we go from here. And so after today's meeting, if we are able to arrive at the consensus that Ms. McAdoo referenced in her comments, we will then be incorporating that in an administrative draft master plan that we hope to issue later this summer or early in the fall. That will then be out for a 3-month public review period. But prior to that review period starting, we will reconvene the SSAC with a meeting to review that draft and to answer any questions that there may be before we go on that broader roadshow to other boards and commissions at the city during that 3-month public review period. Our goal with all of this is to bring a final master plan approval to the City Council early 2025, and prior to doing so, we will come back to this body for a recommendation. And so that would be timed later towards the end of this year, is the goal for all of that. With that, I think we can.
You want to jump into agenda review?
Let's do that. Oh, excuse me.
We are having some technical difficulties. Apparently, we can't see the meeting or hear the meeting on YouTube or City TV, so we're working on that, but not sure if we're going to be able to get that up, so just FYI.
Thank you for that announcement. Hopefully
And if
we'll
I may
do that.
add one more announcement, the Wi-Fi network here in the room is SB City Wi-Fi, and the password is SB Connect, all one word, all lowercase. So that should allow you to get on the Wi-Fi here in the space.
Okay, we'll move right into agenda review. Eli, you want to continue?
Yes, Dave, thank you. So today is really meant to be a discussion and to receive feedback on State Street planning and urban design framework and the related mobility concepts associated with that. We'll start today with a staff presentation. I will present a few slides and then hand it over to Mr. Grumbine to walk us through a more detailed review of the design framework and mobility concepts. From there, we will break out into facilitated small group discussions. I hope all of you on the SSAC have a small slip of paper with a number on it. Those numbers correspond to the tables we have set up in the back of the room here. That's where we'll be breaking out to facilitate those small group discussions. From there,
Eli, just make a note, the small groups will be SSAC members, not the public. Public can observe, but the actual discussion is going to be committee members only, correct?
that is correct, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. From those discussions, we will ask the facilitator, the staff person assigned to each table, to really report out on the nature of the discussions, the items that were discussed, any questions that came up, and sort of sentiments towards the recommendations that are presented in those small group discussions, before then shifting over to public comment. And I believe many of you have already submitted the blue public comment slips that are located in the door next to the entrance. If you have not filled out a public comment slip, please do so, and please present that slip to either Timmy or Greta sitting over my left shoulder.
Okay. Let me just say that, again, we actually will end up with two public comments because I have a general public comment at the beginning, and I understand the differences between the two, and I'm going to be a little flexible at the beginning for people who can't stay around, that need to make comment but leave and not do the small groups. I do want to make an announcement here, though, that we have a number of committee members who need to leave before 6, so we have a 5:50 hard stop. There's a really good chance that we will not get through to the straw poll aspects of our activity today. May have to continue this to the first part of July for the committee only to come back and do that. If we do make it, or when we come back in July, we'll have, obviously a regroup as where we're at. I will ask every committee member to make a 2 or 3 minute kind of summary statement of where we're at before we get into the straw poll itself. So we'll go around the table once, and then we'll go to the straw poll and just basically make those actions. So with that, I'm going to item D. This is the approval of draft minutes of March 18th, 2024. Do I have a motion to approve or any comments on those? Motion to approve by Diane. Second by Megan. Okay, all those in favor, oh, we're actually online. I can't do it. I'm going to do it anyway. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. And I know we're online and that kind of stuff, but, okay, good, great. Thank you very much. That takes us to item E. This is general public comment. And again, I think Greta will tell you, when she gets up there, they'll put a timer up there. You are limited to 2 minutes. Is that what we're doing today? Okay, and don't repeat what previous speakers have said. Indicate that you agree with the previous speaker on an item, and be as concise as you can in order to allow everybody to get as many things in. Greta, do we have anyone who wishes to speak under item 2E, general public comment?
We do, Chair. Crosby Slot.
Crosby will speak later. Jackie Kemp.
Sorry. Hi. Hello. My name is Jackie Karup. I've owned a business on 600 block of State Street for going on 32 years. I'm all for whatever needs to be done. I just want to point out that 600 block is totally occupied now, mostly by retail. I do believe that retail needs people walking on the sidewalk as opposed to, if they're going to do this. I guess I'm questioning the curbless aspect of what I've heard. The 500 block, I understand why it should be curbless because it'll push the outdoor seating to the sidewalk, to the businesses. But in the 600 block, it might not be necessary because we need, since we're all retail, we need people walking on the sidewalks. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Greta?
Next speaker is Bruce Karen, followed by Cowley Cowgill.
Yeah, hello everyone. I just want to applaud the committee and the city staff and elected officials for taking on this task. This is a monumental thing to do. This hasn't happened in Santa Barbara since like 1925. So it's been about 100 years that this kind of scale of an opportunity to refactor the downtown, to face a new economy and to build conviviality into the street. And I think the first part of it is to get the cars off the street from 400 to 1,300 as much as possible. But getting cars off the street isn't the goal. The goal is not to make a car less, it's to make it people full. And people full means not just people walking through, it means people loitering creatively, having opportunities for conversations and for other types of engagements to spend their time and not just their money. So be bold as much as you can. Remember, this is the one-time opportunity we all have, and we're looking to you to guide us. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Callie Cowgill, followed by Pam Gifford.
Hi, may I defer my 2 minutes to Pam Gifford? She's just after me. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm for opening State Street. To me, it's just common sense for the business owners. Visitors are going to other places, Cambria, Solvang, and other places. And we're losing a lot of money because the tourists just aren't coming. And it's just like bed tax is down $6 million this year again, from 2021. And tourists are just not visiting us anymore like they used to. I've walked State Street from Victoria to Paseo Nuevo, talked to the shopkeepers, who only say it's so busy when the cruise ships come in, so then people are coming. It would be beneficial to survey the shopkeepers for City Council themselves and talk to the people there so that they would know what was going on. The last time I checked, there were 49 vacant stores. Shopkeepers want State Street back to normal. It is common sense and business. I invite you to drive through West Beach on Friday afternoon and notice all of the hotel vacancies. The tourists are not visiting us like they used to. Even Santa Maria is doing better than our beautiful beach town. Their mall is thriving. They put in a food court and a playground for the children. They're building 2 apartment buildings a block away and a hotel also in walking distance to the shopping center. The artists from the Sunday Art Show are also suffering. And Santa Barbara has so much to offer. The farmer's market, the trolley, the zoo, the Moxie, the pier, whale watching, beautiful beaches, theaters, breakwater stores, and more. People I have talked to with are happy the way State Street is operating currently, do not have a shop on State Street, and are very negative and pessimistic. It's time we up our game and get back to business and start running our city. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we do have 2 raised hands online. We have Trevor Block, followed by Patrick Casey. Trevor Block, I will unmute you and let you speak. 1 moment, please. Go ahead, Trevor.
People online say they can't hear anything still, so I'm not sure that they'll be able to respond.
Hello.
There you go.
We
I'm
hear
not
you,
sure if
thank you.
anyone can actually hear me here. There doesn't seem to be any audio on the Zoom call, but I just wanted to voice my support for keeping State Street car-free. You know, I think there's a lot of people here who have, you know, said far more eloquently than I can, just the importance of third places or areas for people to gather and be together outside from work and home. You know, prior to COVID, I think the closest thing we would have to a true third place would have been retail spaces, kind of like the mall. But with modern retail evolving into more online experiences, we're kind of faced with a challenge that our communal space options are dwindling. So that's a problem that I think that the State Street Promenade addresses. You know, in my limited time living in the area, I felt more connected to this community than I ever did to prior places that I've called home. You know, it gives this community character. It gives us a place to breathe and be present, to look around at the beautiful architecture while connecting with others. You know, it's a place where we can enjoy local art amidst peaceful dining spots, untouched by the clamor of vehicle traffic. It's where I can stroll with my family worry-free, knowing they're safe from distracted drivers. I understand there are some who are very vocal about wanting State Street to reopen to cars in order to revitalize the area. And to this, I would ask, you know, how will reintroducing traffic congestion and vehicle exhaust revitalize the outdoor dining experience offered by State Street restaurants? How does this help businesses when the number one thing they're struggling with are high rent prices from greedy landlords? Perhaps these efforts should be redirected towards combating high rent costs as opposed to making the promenade just another forgettable street. You know, opening up State Street isn't going to magically bring retail back to what it was before the pandemic, and this isn't something we should really strive for. I think it's time we focus on what will actually benefit this community by nourishing what we have rather than dreaming for something that will never again become a reality. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Evan Grant. Evan Grant, I'll unmute you and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. Go ahead and speak, Trevor.
Hi. I'm not sure if anyone else can hear me either, but I'm a student from City College, and I would also like to express how important I believe it is that we continue to keep State Street closed and walkable to the general public. Every single issue, such as retail prices, of store rent being expensive, issues with, I've heard people talk about the unhoused, I've heard people talk about many issues, that every single one can be mitigated in a way that cars don't need to be involved in the solution. Bringing back cars is not going to change the safety of State Street besides make it more unsafe for pedestrians and bikers. And bringing back cars will not revitalize retail. I believe that we need to solve these issues, like I said, without cars and with the public in mind, with families in mind and with people that work in these stores or have spent a lot of time walking down State Street, such as myself nearly every day, in mind. Instead of reopening, we need to rethink and we need to prioritize the public and more spaces where people can just be people. Thank you.
The next speaker is Russell S., followed by Robert Nielsen and Karen Luckett. Robert S., I'll unmute you. You can go ahead and speak.
Hi, I don't know if anybody can hear me. There appears to be audio issues on this call. I have lived here for a decade. I live and work on State Street. And the State Street Promenade has been genuinely one of the greatest innovations that the city has ever come up with. The idea of reopening it to cars is a tragic misunderstanding of the issues facing retail and the issues facing our community right now. It's something I'm extraordinarily proud of, that we have a pedestrian-friendly space in our city when so many other cities do not prioritize biking and walking to the extent that we do. The enormous value of safety, of security, of peace of mind, of freedom from the noise congestion of cars it's absolutely immeasurable. It is a phenomenal quality of life add, and the idea that we would reopen this to vehicle traffic is absurd, and I'm just astonished that this is even something up for consideration, because a few angry people on Facebook have the mayor's ear. It's a policy failure, plain and simple, that we're having this conversation at all. The State Street Promenade is amazing, is one of the best things we've ever done. And the fact that this meeting is happening at 3 o'clock on a Wednesday, I'm sure is preventing people who work from coming out and voicing their support. But I know that I am part of a majority that cannot speak for itself. Thank you.
The next speaker is Robert Nielsen, followed by Karen Luckett. Robert, I'll unmute you. Go ahead and speak, Robert.
Hello, my name is Rob Nielsen. I have lived and worked in the downtown area, a couple blocks from State Street, for well over a decade now. Since State Street has become car-free, it's opened up new possibilities in my life for my family and I to recreate and enjoy ourselves. There's been obviously a lot of discussion around State Street's importance economically to our town, and a lot of discussion on how State Street used to be. And I think I'd like to offer that we should focus on looking forward. Forward being, to me, that changing trends and how people like to spend their time and live and work. And so to me, it feels like State Street should represent the Grand Paseo model and become more than just a shopping center and a place to drive through, something more of the feel of a Central Park, a green belt, a place to recreate and spend time together in a healthy, happy way as a community. And so adding in infrastructure and features that both support businesses, but most importantly bring us together as a community, is what I'd prioritize. And I would very strongly deprioritize private vehicle traffic. Microtransit and other forms of mobility are important. My mother has a disability and I'd like to keep her in mind, but to me that does not mean private vehicle traffic down State Street. Thank you.
The next speaker is Karen Luckett. Karen Luckett, you can speak now.
Hi, this is Karen Luckett. I would like to say I am really, really looking forward to closing off and leveling the street with the sidewalk so we can have those art spaces and entertainment spaces. Right now, it feels a little bit too much heavy traffic from bikes, and I know the plan is to create people space, art space, music space, art, and so I'm looking forward to getting the sidewalk, the street level with the sidewalk, so it feels more like our space, you know, not like recovered street space for cars that might become cars one day. So I'm really hoping we can start implementing this plan within a couple blocks of designated State Street space to do what we really want and have a gathering space, and hopefully also get a little bit more enforcement, because State Street is one of our most heavily pedestrian spaces, and there's no regulation of you know, people being offensive with high-speed bicycles or wheelies or such. So maybe we could narrow the bike lane down and get some walking patrol enforcement to make it safer for all of us. Thank you.
Greta, before you go to the next speaker, how many people do we have to speak right now on this part of the public comment?
There are no more hands raised online.
Okay, we're going to cut this off. Any other blue slips for this one?
We do have one other general comment.
Okay, let's cut it there, then we'll move into the staff presentation. Thank
And
you.
if I could interject, we did have 227 written public comments that were received and distributed to the SSAC.
Yes, we know.
The last speaker for general public comment is Marilyn Loperfido.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for receiving my comments today. My name is Marilyn Loperfido. For those of you who don't know, I am a 44-year member of the Santa Barbara Arts and Crafts Show. And I also sit on our elected advisory committee. And I'm nervous. I've attended these meetings from the beginning, and so I'm speaking both on behalf of our show, also with excitement about the plans and the things that we're dealing with today. But what I wanted to emphasize is that what we decide in these rooms are going to have serious implications for us for decades to come. The reason it's important is since the pandemic and the closure of State Street, we've actually been cut off from the main artery of Santa Barbara. So what happens is we don't share tourists or locals alike anymore. We just kind of get accidental tourists down at the beach. So why I'm speaking today and why I speak at the meetings is because the loss of business has been dramatic to us, and it's scary. That to make sure we remember what the needs and the show of will be when we make these plans, and to consider any permanent sort of position that may come if there's a discussion of a marketplace permanently downtown. And as always, I include my contact information. I really am open to discussions and how we can further the needs of our show, which may not be apparent to the general public or just at this very meeting. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for this amazing meeting today, and appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, that moves us then to item 3, under the agenda item, discussion and feedback to staff on the preferred concepts and alternatives for State Street. We will turn it over to Eli. Eli, take us away.
Thank you, Chair Davis. If we could advance the slide, please.
Either that or you only have 2 minutes, man.
Well, while we're waiting on the slides to get advanced, I want to just quickly revisit today's meeting format. So this is the beginning of the staff presentation. As I mentioned earlier, I'll be introducing sort of the larger urban design framework that sort of spawned some of the mobility concepts that my colleague Anthony Grumbine will review in more detail. And after that review of the design and mobility strategies, we will move to into the facilitated small groups with the report out, and then we'll move into the public comments portion on this agenda item. After that, as Chair Davis mentioned, we do have a sort of hard out at 10 to 6 today, and so we'll see where we are at that time and make a decision then on what else we are able to do today. Again, today's goal, as Ms. McAdoo mentioned earlier, is really looking for support for the staff recommended design concepts and mobility strategies that have been presented, both in the staff memo as well as in the PowerPoint we are presenting today. a little bit of background, I think, is useful. Where have we been? So we've had over now 15 SSAC meetings since we started back in 2021. We've done significant community outreach. Kudos to Tess Harris and her team. We participated in over 60 events, held 20 public meetings, conducted 60 surveys, and have had over 20,000 views to our website. During the survey engagements, the information we got back from that, I want to remind folks, was pretty strong in its support for fewer cars on State Street. That was a pretty consistent element of feedback we got through our survey work back in 2021 and 2022. Out of these SSAC meetings that we've been having, I think this idea of districts has emerged. That is included in the urban design framework that we are discussing today. We've also engaged with our consultants as well as our internal city partners and other departments on concluding a number of technical reports. These conversations have also generated a number of guiding principles, which I will cover here in a second, and a series of sketches that have sort of furthered the conversation, and we'll be looking at some more of those today later in this presentation. So in talking about this framework or this community vision, I think it's important to look back to a quote from Hal Conklin. I think this quote specifically, that Santa Barbara's downtown should invoke a sense of place, a sense of history, a sense of celebration, has really been a touchstone, I think, for the work of this committee and staff in getting us to this point. And so I want to make sure that we acknowledge Hal's contributions to the development of this framework and just to our city in general. So those 4 guiding principles that I referenced a second ago, the first of that is really focusing on people and placemaking. In doing so, really trying to promote downtown success. That success is really based off of economic vitality. We see that as being critical to sort of larger citywide goals around economic development. Mobility, which we're talking today, as well as utilities, providing those essential functions in the core of our city, and then really looking to sustainable design practices and incorporating those whenever possible to really provide that long-term resiliency to our downtown. So this is a quick concept sketch of sort of what we're thinking about in terms of really reimagining a different sort of center of downtown. And as you see, we have these sort of, at the center of the screen is a 9-block area extending east to west from Santa Barbara Street to Chapala Street, and from north to south from Carrillo Streets to Ortega Street. And really thinking about that as the center of our downtown. And in doing so, really thinking about those blocks of State Street that are within that core in a very different way, and treating them in a different way than we might treat the length of the street on the blocks on either side, where we're really thinking about the movement of people, the movement of bicycles, the movement of vehicles. That center area is really about reimagining the use of urban space to really be for people. And so that center concept, that idea of a really strengthened pedestrian core, represents a synthesis of the feedback and input we've received to this point. It's really about extending State Street in this core area to connect it with the culturally relevant sites in the immediate vicinity, those being De La Guerra Plaza, the Presidio, and others that that are too numerous to mention. It's really about leveraging the existence of our Paseo network. That's where some of our strongest Paseos are in those areas. And also there are existing Paseos where there's good opportunity to really strengthen and extend the network in other parts of our city. And as I said earlier, it really presents an opportunity to address the question that's come up in this committee about how can we use urban spaces differently if we're really thinking about a future that's designed to be less automobile focused. And then that core really becomes the anchoring element of what can be thought of as a Grand Paseo. And the Grand Paseo is really an idea that's sort of approached with a pedestrian-first design philosophy. It becomes the basis of a vibrant mixed-use neighborhood. I think throughout these conversations, we've been focused on a future of downtown that includes thousands more housing units. Our current housing policies point us in that direction, and this master planning effort will look for opportunities to expand and enhance those policies further to encourage even more housing downtown. It provides new public spaces, and those public spaces are designed to be for events, performance, other social gatherings, really with the idea of celebrating community in mind. We really want to promote experiences of exploration and wonder. I think that's something that is so magical about our existing Paseo network. It really beckons you in and asks you to peek around the corner and see what's around the next bend. And I think that element really has a lot of potential to be strengthened as we continue to reimagine the downtown. And lastly, it really has the potential to create an excitement and interest that we think is essential to generating the social and economic vitality that we're really trying to accomplish with this plan. And so with that sort of setup, I'd like to hand the mic over to Mr. Anthony Grumbine. He and his team have been working diligently on developing more detailed design concepts around mobility and other urban design principles, and he can start running us through those now. Thank you, Anthony.
All right, thank you, Eli. Okay, so I wanted to, we do have a lot to do today, so I'll try to keep this fairly brief and kind of give a basic overview, and then that way all these topics can be developed more in the small groups. Oh, thanks. And does it have a pointer too? Right there? Okay. All right, try it out. There we go. Okay, great. Okay, so first I wanted to thank the team of colleagues that have been continuing to work on this, voluntarily, pro bono. So Fred, Mark, John, Ching, Thomas, Justin, Nick, and Nehal, who's our summer intern from Notre Dame, who has been helping out a lot. So a lot of these renderings have been her work. So thank you all. As well, I wanted to thank the AIA Charettes. It takes decades sometimes to get these ideas developed and brought forward. And so now 2017 was a major move in that, and then 2020. So I want to thank all the AIA contributors to this. A lot of their ideas have been very helpful as we have been moving forward here. So thank you to all of you, and also especially to Cass Ensberg, a fellow HLC commissioner and someone who has contributed a lot. And there actually is going to be something you'll see in here that is similar to one of her plans and ideas. So thank you to all of them. So, all right. Okay, so let's roll through here. So I guess I could go to the next slide, huh? Okay. Okay, so we're going to go over the recommended design concept and how the mobility strategies of these blocks fit into it, and then you all will be getting into the weeds of it as we do breakout sessions, which are a lot easier to ask questions, work through, come up with ideas, and really kick the tires on these ideas and what you're going to see. So, all right, so here's our basic division that Eli had mentioned and that we've been talking about. So the Arts District, the De La Guerra District as the core, which is our core civic district, and really the area that we're focusing on as the Grand Paseo, and then the Entertainment District. So we're going to go through each of those districts and each of the blocks and just do a quick touch on what the strategies are for that, the design strategies, and also the mobility and how that plays into it. All right, so let's go. All right, so this figure ground study just kind of shows the building massing versus open space. And one of the important things to look at in that, here you can see Paseo Nuevo is basically the only blocks that are really built out in a fully dense Santa Barbara Paseo way. You can also see the original El Paseo here, but it has a parking lot on this side and some open space and as well Plaza de la Guerra and its open space, which is a big surface parking. And we show this just to talk about how much opportunity there is to actually develop a proper Santa Barbara vision, which was really started with El Paseo, Bernard Hoffman, Pearl Chase, and plenty of architects as well, trying to show what the city could be. And really, we see this as a continuation and magnification of that vision. So, here's the Grand Paseo area region that we're looking at as well. And really with these areas, we've been talking about this from the previous time as well, and actually even from last year, the idea of really magnifying the Paseos as our unique special system for our city, which no other cities really have, our structure. And so really trying to complete it and magnify it, starting with the Grand Paseo as the core. So then these regions, one of the other, so we have the core Grand Paseo region, and then we have the entertainment district, which really kind of stretches to the 300, but we really weren't studying that because that's already in the works. And then the arts district here, and then this section of the green and this section of the purple will have alternates as well that we looked at for transportation alternates. And then the blue line is showing you what this sort of small, low-intensity transit would be, whether that's a trolley or something of that nature, but very experience-oriented in terms of movement, and where it might go, and it could go there, or it could also wrap onto Ken and Perdido with the different with the other options. So, but the idea would for sure take you up, and mobility would take you up State Street, and then be able to swing around as there are other modes of transportation as well.
Anthony, can I interrupt for 1 second?
Sure.
Just for people, especially online, that can't hear you, could you do?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'll go right.
Eat the mic, as they say.
All right. Sounds good. All right. So let's go on to the next. Okay. So now we're kind of zooming in to the 400 block and talking about the entertainment. And actually, I'll go back one more for a second. So let's just talk about the entertainment district for a minute here. So, and also the overall design. Actually, sorry, one more step back. We're going to talk about a few more ideas of the overall design concept, which you saw somewhat last time, that has been fleshed out more additionally. And so, as we showed you last time, the idea is where the Paseos intersect with State Street and where they intersect with side streets as well. The idea is to magnify that intersection so that the Paseo systems become more used, more visible, more, raise awareness of them and draw you into them, which means that we also have to complete them and make them beautiful, because you naturally won't go into a dark or scary or ugly or dirty place. Or non-existent if you don't have a Paseo. So then the lower area here, you see the landscape plan that has overlaid this. So all the little bubbles are are intersections of either streets or Paseos onto the State Street. So that was originally the design concept as a sort of overarching principle. And then one more piece was that the landscape itself, Justin Manuel, who wasn't able to be here today, and he, part of his strategy was to analyze all the trees that are existing and sort of play off of a lot of them. Some of them will have to be moved or removed to magnify them. But the concept was to look at these 3 districts and treat them separately. So where you have at the core, we want the most openness at ground level for larger festivals and larger gatherings, and we want the sort of maybe tall trees with canopy, but we want it sort of clear. Whereas in the entertainment district and the arts district, that tree canopy and those plantings can break up the sidewalk more or the walkway more, and also come down lower and provide more intimate scale and setting. So that is our overarching principles of design, and you'll see that as we go through these. Okay, so if this will click forward. There we go. Okay, so the 400 block and here's the 300 block is the beginning of the entertainment district, which let's see if this, sorry, just getting my technical skills here. Okay, so the entertainment district really is starting at the 300 block. That's already underway. That's being widened. That's being developed. So one part is we can say, to all the naysayers that said State Street will never happen, well, we already got one piece almost done, so we could just keep it rolling. And a lot of that alignment of the bike lanes and of the walkways can happen eventually when the 400 block gets done, if it gets done in this manner. Let's go here. So here's your entry to it. As we have discussed before, the 400 block needs to be kept open to traffic both ways, cars both ways, vehicles both ways, for safety concerns and as a route. So we have that, but we expand the sidewalks as we had showed you before. We have a more formal array of trees. We have a primary gateway that we talked about before as well, this art piece or announcing this entrance to this portion, and visually being clear from across the way as people come up from underneath the 101. And then it also expands as sidewalks for dining performers, so it's emphasizing that aspect as well. And it has bike lanes in both directions. The landscape plan of it, as you see, with nodes, and actually this node looks like a little shifted off, but where the paseos exit, the landscape responds to that, it frames that, and it sort of magnifies the view of that. And then at the intersections of the street, which those bubbles should be on the street, those are also accentuated, so visually you have a clarity there's something happening as you're crossing that intersection. And then here's the visual of it. Concept sketch showing the curb, widened sidewalk, more space for entertainers and others, but still having access for vehicles, cars, and emergency vehicles in both directions, as well as bike lanes on the side. And then the more formal array of palms to frame the entrance into the city. All right, so now the 500 and 600 blocks here, 500 block, 600 block, here's Coda, Ortega. So as you see with Haley, you have this some sort of a artistic move where we visually tell the traffic to turn and frame a 20-foot opening that allows for our emergency path that has to go throughout everywhere, and as well as the trolley or other experiential transportation to come through. So here's, for this, the preferred or recommended design is flat and flexible, so it's curbless. They have the 20-foot car-free experiential transit, pedestrian, and bikes. But out of this, so State Street is basically 80 feet across, and so 60 feet is dedicated to pedestrians, dining, and performers. So we really get a lot of good real estate here for the public uses. And then here we have the accentuations of the paseos popping through, as well as the cross streets. And here's a visual for it. So we have no curb, so it's all flat and flexible, and then which allows for, even though we're indicating the path of where the trolley and or other transportation would go and bikes would go, and we keep that open, that 20-foot open, we still have a great deal of space on either side for pedestrians and for other dining and shops. And also just a note on these section perspectives, they're done at various points, mostly mid-block basically, throughout the blocks, and so they give you sort of a general sense of what that block would feel like and look like. So this is a 600 block. Again, it's very similar to the 500 block. You can see there's a little more plantings and things, the canopy's a little bit lower, and there's more plantings at ground level than you'll see in the 700, 800, 900 blocks. All right, and then so there is we also have alternates. So this alternate would be, instead of having carless, we would have one-way traffic of cars, one way with two bike lanes, which means that you have to have curbs. So we're also proposing, in that case where you have paseos, you cut across and have it on plane with the sidewalk here, so that you have a bump. You basically build in a road bump. And this is done, it helps slow down traffic, as well as gives priority to the pedestrian. And so that's the sort of general concept for this alternate. All right, so then now going on to the 700 to 900 block of the Paseo plan. So as we showed you at a in the previous meeting, with the Paseo analysis, this green existing or blue-green, I'm actually colorblind in greens, so for the record. Found that out last year on St. Patrick's Day. So true story. There's weak Paseos and non-existent, potential Paseos, which are non-existent, are these green and yellow, and then with this aqua blue being the ones that do exist currently. So you can see we're very underdeveloped in terms of our Paseo system, and this is the best that our city has right now, the best areas of blocks in terms of sort of on average. So even the best of our areas aren't really there yet at all, but that's the opportunity to really push and develop, and then that will really help with the pedestrian level experience as well. All right, so for the 700 to 900 block, we have here 700, 800, there's De La Guerra Street, 800, 900. So we're really seeing this as sort of one whole, the most pedestrian oriented, and the question of bikes is not controversial at all. No, I'm just kidding. So the question of bikes is a key to this, and so in the discussion, if there's a bike route that is identified here, if we're going to change it, we have to move it all the way around, like, and it would be Chapala would probably be the most obvious. Move that bike route all the way around. Now, if we allow bikes through regularly, but then have more special events or high tourist season or weekends or things like that that are not given every single day or whatever, then we can have some flexibility with allowing bikes at some times and then walk your wheels or other things on the other. So would be the easiest, least expensive, and in our idea, generally speaking, preferable way where we can have it given over for prime time to all pedestrian and walk your wheels and that, whereas the day-to-day could be done more allowable to bike traffic as part of it. But we still think that either way we should have curbless. Oh yeah, one more thing is if you have cars on the road, you have to have a curb, basically. So the idea is if you have carbs, you have a curb, and so on all the designs, that's what you see. We're trying to get to curbless as much as possible and as flexible as possible because that is in general, better pedestrian-minded design. So this would be a pedestrian prioritized, flat and flexible, curbless for 80 feet, the whole thing. Loading and delivery at early hours, walk on your wheels options for certain times of year or week. And especially tourist seasons where we have the most people there. Okay, so then this is the landscape plan showing those accentuated paseos. This is a little shifted over, but you get the idea similarly to the previous ones. Here's our 700 block perspective, but really the 700, 800, 900, you can kind of, in general, they're all similar. So it's sort of one size fits all. So they have space for things like pop-up markets, activities. We could have that trolley sometimes. And then we have the San Marcos building in the back. No, it's not San Marcos. Sorry, I just went blank on the name. Balboa building in the background, which no one really sees because you don't see it after the trees. But we also, if you notice the 700, there's very little, everything's trees and grates and maybe a little bit of landscaping, but it's really trying to keep as flexible as possible and as pedestrian friendly and as event space friendly as possible. So, all right, so here's the 800 block. Similarly, we've got it all very flat and flexible. We can have outdoor dining, slow trolley, people walking their bikes. More of the same in the 900 block as well. You could have big gatherings. So the idea would be, really it's sort of treating it more like a plaza, a piazza. And so it's really giving a real strong, which plenty of historic cities across Europe have. As it just in Rome last week, and Piazza Navona is probably 4 or 5 blocks long, equal to ours, and it's just all one big giant piazza, and a lot wider actually. So, but it's giving that major public space and pedestrian space. All right, so then now we're going to the 1,000 and up block. So key concepts here. So we're in both options. We look at doing cars on as part of the street. In this option, we show it as one-way cars, which gives us more space for the sidewalk. We do a similar treatment with flat sidewalk level crossing as well, so we're prioritizing the pedestrian experience, and it's also accentuating the paseos, where you have a paseo and you have that crossing aligned with it. So now we're recognizing the paseo strongly in the middle of the street as well, visually. And then we have one-way cars and then 2 lanes of bike lanes. And part of this is for efficiency of being able to drop off at the Granada and the theater spaces and public spaces. And so having that accessibility via a car was a way of doing that, as well as with Carrillo being a major artery and this being a safety ability to easy access, that was also a key factor in wanting to have a vehicular access to this area, and which means you have a curb, and also as part of that, we're shifting. So we shift the curb and the drive away from certain areas to create larger spaces, like at the library or at the art museum, Museum of Art, and to create larger sort of plaza spaces. So there's a shift back and forth as well as drop-off space. All right. And then our nodes as well. I think these are shifted as well. But they looked right on the drawings. All right, so 100 block perspective, 1,000 block perspective, you see the curb cut here, 2 lanes of bikes, 1 lane of car going that direction, and the trolley as well, or other modal transportation. As you're seeing, the tree canopy is coming down a bit more. We're also breaking up the sidewalks a bit more with plantings and other things, and that is sort of making it more of the individual space and more intimate, as opposed to the big, grand, open public spaces of the 700 through 900 blocks. All right, so 1100 block, you can see this shifted over now. You see the one-way traffic shifted way over and giving the plaza and the open space here to create that open public plaza space. One thing I forgot to mention was the question came up before and by Commissioner Lenvik, who brought up the palm tree discussion of connecting it to the upper State Street. So the tree plan, State Street's the only street that doesn't have a particular tree designated for it as all the rest of the streets of Santa Barbara do, this portion of State Street. So the design is actually, or the design requirement is actually for mixed Mediterranean palette. And so, but we also thought there was value in the connecting it to the palms, the alley of palms that go up the upper portion of State Street. So what we basically have is a sprinkle of palms so that from really far away, you'll be able to visually see, like you can see Cabrillo Boulevard from far away. You'll be able to visually make out State Street because it'll have these palms that kind of poke out over the canopy of the trees. So it's not doing anything for the people down on the street, but it is doing something visually for the city so that you see this axis of State Street from afar.
Anthony,
Yeah.
we're going to, about 4:25, we're going to have to break into the small group, so you've got a little less than 10 minutes.
Okay, I can finish it.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, we'll get even an extra 4 or 5 minutes for you for the breakout groups. All right, 1,200 block perspective. So we've got the curb cut here. So that increases our sidewalk widths because we only have to deal with 1 car lane of traffic. So we get bigger sidewalks than what we currently have. That's better public space. Yep, and we'll keep going from there. So this is the alternate design, and let's see. Oh, actually, maybe this is, darn, I think this slide is, hold on, let's see if we can find the alternate. Is it? Okay, maybe I just have bad eyes. Oh, is that it? Back? Okay, yeah, you're right. Okay, so it's just my bad eyes, sorry. So the alternate design has 2 lanes of cars, two-way traffic, very much like the 400 block, and bike lane on either side, just like the 400 block. It has a little bit less space on the sidewalk than the preferred one that we have. It's it's very close to what the current condition is. It would get you a little bit more space, but not a lot more. And it's similar to what Cass Ensberg had proposed in terms of basically keeping the sidewalk where it is, and but taking down planters and making things more flat and open for dining. So that's an alternative for the 1,000 to 1,200 block. And then for the 1,300 block, it's just the same for both. We're looking at two-way, which is where it's going back to now, two-way traffic for cars and then bikes on the side. But still widening the sidewalks a bit and having a drop-off, having drop-off space in front of the Arlington. Let's see. Oh, and one more piece is the gateway. So the gateway here, just like there's a gateway and/or announcement, which is a very common thing in traditional cities to have a demarcation of a place where you're entering very strongly. It doesn't have to be a gate, but having a strong demarcation of an area or district or zone that you're going into is very appropriate for those as a traditional city. So that would be something that would be preferred as well. And then a similarly landscape plan that emphasizes all these nodes and intersections. And then here's our perspective of it. So you've got cars two ways, bikes on the other side, a little bit bigger of sidewalk, and then with the trees accentuating at crossings and at the Paseo intersections. All right, and so, so this is the final portion, which is really just to emphasize the concept of the Grand Paseo, and what we feel is with the Grand Paseo concept and the Paseo magnification concept, which we feel is both very Santa Barbara as well as complementary with this multimodal design scheme, which is the key aspect of being decided on today. So, all right.
So thank you, Anthony. In the interest of time, we had to run through that pretty quickly, and so I'm sure there are some questions. We're now going to break into the small groups to run through those questions. All of you on the SSAC should have a number at your table. Those numbers correspond to various tables we have here in the room. And so if I could please ask those members of SSAC to start making your way to your corresponding table, we can get going. Chair Davis, would you like to make any
Yes, I just want to say,
comments?
we're going to, right now, I have it at basically 4:16, 4:15. We're going to do an hour up to 5:15, but we need to break those groups and get back here. We will start public comment. We will not finish today. So I think it's clear that at 5:50, those members who need to leave will leave. We can continue public comment to some degree after that, since the rest of us, it will be on tape. So at this point, let's go.
All right, thank you, everyone. And again, just a reminder to those members of the public who've joined us this afternoon, please feel free to wander around and listen in on some of those discussions. However, please be respectful of the work of the committee and simply just listen in at this point. Thank you. All right.
Okay, I'm out. See ya. I gotta go.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. I think most of us have made our way back to our seats. Do I have a volunteer from one of our facilitation teams to begin the report out?
Table one.
Table
Tess?
1. Tess Harris.
No, I don't want the pointer. Thank you, though. Actually, yeah. 1 second. Table 1's going to need to wait a minute. So for the design overview, the group talked about focusing on the core as being a really good component of the plan. So we talked about the 700, 800, and 900 blocks. There was conversation about if going those full 3 blocks, there were some potential challenges circulation-wise. And the group felt like a 2-block ped-only space made more sense than the 3-block ped-only. So the focus for that group was really around the 700 and 800 block. We talked about programming, really encouraging more policing on those blocks, particularly when we have them as pedestrian only. We talked about, there was some conversation about it being okay to be open for morning commute for bicycles. Let's see. We talked a lot about transit and experiential transit and the idea of a pedicab or trolley on State Street. There seemed to be more of a majority consensus, not the entire group, but most of the group felt like having some kind of shuttle trolley or some sort of system going up State Street, the full length made a lot of sense. And then we talked about the circulator component and that providing a different, just really a different need and in an ideal world having both of them. There was conversation about gateways and having gateways around that De La Guerra district to really emphasize the pedestrian space. Some conversation around the 400 block and a desire for it to potentially be one-way instead of two-way and more study there. Let's go to the Arts District. There was general consensus from the group on from the 900 to the 1200 block, so adding a block to have a one-way vehicle lane with bikes on the side. So that was the proposal that was shown, and then would be adding the 900 block to that. Let's see. Conversations around more passive activation versus active. So the ideas of really accentuating the paseos and art and making it the open space for housing. Let's see, what else? We also talked on the entertainment district. There seemed like general consensus, although there was some differences of opinion from the group on separation of bikes and pedestrians in that 500 and 600 block. And so we talked a lot about whether that 20 feet of space should have only shuttles and bikes and leave the 60 feet to pedestrians on the edges. And then some conversation on a one-way vehicle lane, and at least a couple of the members were interested in that alternate approach as well for that section.
Great, thank you. Group 2. Hang on, Suzanne, we can't do that.
They're saying there's no sound.
Timmy, do you want to lead us through Group 2's small group discussion?
Sure. Thank you, Eli. I'm a Flipboard guy, so I got Flipboard from our discussion here. We worked our way up through the different blocks, starting at the 400 block. There was support for the vegetation there and the Palm Alley concept. There was really a strong desire and discussion about the need for this area to be really welcoming. So a gateway element fits into that. It needs to be fun, welcoming, and widening sidewalks fits within that vision. We talked about some of the trade-offs and how that can relate to drop-off zones or not. And when those decisions are made, they need to be coordinated in conjunction with the businesses that are on that blocks to make sure they're integrated in this conversation. There was a discussion about including signage in this, both so people know where to park, but also wayfinding elements of the area. And there was support for the speed tables and allowing the different modes given the emergency access needs on this block. Walking up now to the 500 and 600 blocks. With this one, there was a lot of consensus about the flat and flexible design concept being curbless with no cars. There was support for having the experiential transit. And then with the bike side of things, really, there was a discussion on that really needs to be studied in more detail, especially in light of the fact that there are 22 businesses on that block, on the 500 and 600 block, I believe, who have said that they don't want to have bikes in there, but there also needs to be a consideration of if there aren't bikes, needs to be at times when it makes sense. there was a conversation about perhaps including the similar language that we had in the core extended into this block. There was general consensus about having experiential transit. And yeah, I think those were the highlights from the 500 and 600 block. Shifting now into the De La Guerra district and that core, there was strong consensus about the flat and flexible design concept through this and it being pedestrian prioritized. Strong consensus for no cars, although there was a discussion later on about some of the interim stuff and how we get there and just considering feasibility and programming and activation, especially in light of its context next to De La Guerra Plaza, and that being a pedestrian-only space. There was a desire to test a bunch of these things while we move forward and work towards this long-term vision. Support for experiential transit is part of this, as well as the 900 block serving as some sort of transition. There was a member who thought that one could reintroduce cars and the long-term design as part of this. But in general, strong support for the overarching concept of a pedestrian core there. Shifting now up to the Arts District. This one, there was a concern over programming feasibility if all the 8 blocks were the same sort of flat, flexible, multimodal prioritized type spaces. The mobility strategy and how cars would fit into that, it was mixed within the group, sort of ran the gamut of either no cars, one-way, or two-way traffic as part of that. There did seem to be some support, though, around having transit bikes and potentially experimenting how we can use some of the 0 blocks and cross streets to facilitate drop-off, perhaps like cutting into a curb cut or something to facilitate like Granada drop-off, for instance. And we didn't quite make it to the 1300 block, so not sure how that landed, but overall a good discussion.
Thank you. Group 3.
Thanks, Timmy. We're going to hand it over to Anthony Grumbine to report out on Group 3.
All right. So for our group discussions, I'll go from memory. So please, Group 3ers or anyone else wants to pretend they were in Group 3, just throw out some comments if I'm forgetting stuff, which I'm sure I will be. All right. So we'll just work our way up. So 400 block. There was some pushback on whether we need to have two-way and whether there was Gutierrez could go to two-way again, and whether that could be the access for, and wanting to see a study about it. But we assumed that it is necessary. Assuming it is necessary, they were generally supportive of the gateway, of the palms, and of the increased sidewalk, and all those aspects. So assuming that it has to be two-way to cars, then they were in support of this, all those major steps. But they did want to see the report or whatever it is that shows that we can't reopen Gutierrez to two-way. And then in which case, then I would think that they would want to be lumping it with the next, because they were very, the majority were very no cars on these as well. So they were in favor of the proposed and not the alternate. So going curbless. And in general, one member was, and maybe there was others that were as well, but were concerned about, weren't concerned about this block, but were concerned about this block and the businesses, and we're feeling that circulation of cars through here would be beneficial. I was explaining that our group had looked at that as an option but we felt that it was too changing in terms of all the different modes of transportation. Would be a confusing way of getting around, having two-way here, then one-way here, or then no way here, then one-way here. So we felt that it needed to be treated as the previous group, design group, felt that it needed to be treated as a whole. So that was a part of our discussion. But the majority did feel that going no cars and curbless here was beneficial. There was concern about the bikes and bike lane striped, and one of the discussions was about how the way it is now is not the way it's going to be if it's flat and curbless. There's going to be a strong pinch-in terms of landscape and other elements that will naturally very much calm things down. But there was strong concern for wanting to make sure that there was slow bike traffic with the pedestrians. And then through here, one of the comments was which is right, this area, while it's being considered as a concept, is not actually being proposed with any design. The idea is that this eventually over time would be another area to connect and develop as part of the Grand Paseo. So that was a note. Also, there was there was not a fan of the cutesy trolley that idea, but wanted to make sure also that it was ADA. So we had that discussion as well. But I think in general, people did feel that having that transportation, entertaining transportation that goes very slow is different than as long as there is another transportation element that actually circulates people, especially that live here, that aren't going to ride the trolley for 45 minutes every day up State Street. So that was part of our discussion for that. But it also helped with ADA, even though if you did close it down to pedestrian, technically you could fit the ADA requirements, but it's not a very friendly way of actually creating a space that people get exhausted after a block. Okay, so that was part of that trolley discussion. In general, they were in favor of the curbless, wanting little bike traffic as possible, and that was sort of where we kind of left it, was just wanting things slow and during off times or whatever, using it at least to some degree for the bikes. And then this was our most interesting discussion, because they actually wanted these blocks to be more like these blocks, and they didn't want the cars on these blocks and the curbs, and they wanted it to be stronger pedestrian. So there was there was discussion around that, and that was part of that discussion was about police, fire, and others that want access off of Carrillo as the major artery, and for this to be, if there are vehicles, then it creates an easier continuous way. But that was part of the discussion, and them wanting it to be more of the purely pedestrian friendly if possible. So that wanting more discussion on that. And then finally the 1300 block we got to, and there was similar pushback from the 400 block of why can't it be moved to out over here and keep a continuation of whatever happens here in front of the Arlington as well. And we had the fire chief there to discuss on how basically because with the bike thing on Sola, they can't access it, so they've got to go all the way around to get to this access point. And so it was really important that they had that as two-way curbed, even though they're bigger sidewalks, but two-way curbed. So that was our discussions. And I don't know if anyone from Group 3 wants to chime in.
Actually, don't. No, I really don't want to have internal discussion. Let's just keep with the speaker. We got to get to public comment. Yeah. We're going to lose some members here, and we're going to have SSAC continue. We're going to have further discussion later on. Okay. One, I just want to make a comment. I really was appreciative of the internal dialogue that I saw at all three tables. It was really, really fine dialogue between people, civil to the point with some real strong opinions by people. But again, I really thought that it worked quite well. So congratulations to staff for bringing us into this format. Okay, we're going to go to public comment. We're going to lose a few members as we go forward right here, but we will retain a quorum. Okay, I'm going to basically cut off any new public comment slips being put in. Greta, you hear that? Right? No new slips at this point. How many do we have?
I believe we have around 20. Is that, I think that's
okay,
what
so we're going to, again, go to, I think we do 2 minutes. That's 40 minutes plus of comment. Is that okay with the committee? Because we're going to lose a couple, but we will have a quorum. But we're talking 44 minutes. Okay, with that, thank you for the facilitation. Thank you for the small groups. Let's open the public comment. Greta?
This first speaker is Crosby Slot. Crosby, you have 2 minutes to speak.
Yeah, Greta, announce the next two so they can be ready to go.
Sure. After Crosby, we have Mary Buchholz and Guthrie Leonard.
Okay, there you go, Crosby. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. My name is Crosby Slot, and I work with Investec Real Estate Companies here in Santa Barbara. We are a mainly retail investment and management company that's heavily invested in downtown Santa Barbara. And so a lot of what I do on the day-to-day is talking to retail tenants and figuring out what they're looking for and what they need. And one of the big things that we continually talk to tenants about, whether it's in Santa Barbara or in other communities, is your visibility, your parking, and one of the big things that a little concerned about with especially closing our main Paseo Nuevo, which is kind of our de facto retail, and not having any vehicular access, is the loss of visibility for those tenants. I did see one rendering where they were looking at putting a fountain there, and I thought that would be a really interesting place to have a turnaround in which we could get, whether they're tourists or people just coming to shop, right to the center of Paseo Nuevo immediately. They can get dropped off there. They can then spread out, so we're not working just south to north or north to south, so we can be working both directions as well. Another thing that I would just be really interested to see and hear about more is what's the best economic way to go about each space? Is from an economic standpoint, is it best to have, the 6 to 800 block closed, or is that best for the 6 to 400 blocks? Just kind of having some numbers behind that instead of just kind of our thoughts that this would look best. Just a professional that can put some numbers behind that. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Mary Buchholz, followed by Guthrie Leonard and Sharon Rich.
I depend on my bicycle for daily transportation, errands, and commuting. And I don't ride an e-bike, just an old, slow, heavy bike. State Street is literally a lifeline for me. It makes it possible for me to buy most of what I need from local small businesses. I spend several $100s a week on or near State Street because I can ride safely there. I've been told that I'm an indicator species. When women, and especially older women like me, feel comfortable riding a bike, it's an indication that the infrastructure is safe because women tend to be more risk-averse than men. And as I ride on State Street these days, I've noticed many more older women and older men and small children and wheelchair users and many other people who just want to enjoy one safe street, one street without cars. Access for emergency vehicles does not require allowing all motor vehicles, and bikes are capable of riding slowly if the infrastructure encourages it. Every other street in the city is car-dominated. I'm asking that all of State Street remain a safe street for pedestrians, for cyclists, and for other vulnerable road users by keeping motor vehicles off the entire length of downtown from the 400 block to the 1300 block. We've already seen erosions of that safety when 2 blocks were given back to cars, and I've already witnessed and experienced how dangerous that is for those of us who aren't in cars. Cars are not compatible with bikes. Cars kill cyclists. The problem with State Street isn't that it doesn't have cars on it or that it has bikes on it. The problem is that it hasn't yet been designed to meet its current function as a pedestrianized zone with dedicated space for bikes. Many other cities all around the world have figured out how to do this, and Santa Barbara can too. This is a key issue for me, and I vote. The vast majority of Santa Barbara residents agree with me. I ask you to do the right thing for our economy, our climate, and our health. Keep State Street a safe street. All you have to do is finish the job. Thank you.
Okay.
The next
I'm going to ask if you don't not clap for speakers now. We really want to get through the public hearing and move it as quickly as we can. So please withhold your clapping, please. Thank you.
Next speaker is Guthrie Leonard, followed
Hi.
by Sharon Rich.
Hi, thank you. I have been a resident of Santa Barbara for pretty much my whole life. There's a lot of things to talk about with State Street, so I'm going to keep it to the things where I feel like I have something unique to say. The first thing I want to say is I talked about coming here with all my coworkers this morning, and every single one of them were shocked that it was not already set in stone that all of State Street would be pedestrianized. And I don't feel like that's unique. I don't feel like that's out of the ordinary. I think the vast majority of the population likes it the way it is now and thinks it can get better. I don't want us to regress by adding cars. I think that's a pretty clear statement from the community. I also want to talk about just the ADA situation. I think it's pretty realistic to see how flat and flexible is the most helpful for that. My dad got in a bike accident 7 years ago. It's very difficult for him to move around. It's very helpful when he doesn't have to go up and down stairs, doesn't have to go up and down drops. That's one of the most difficult things for people in the disabled community. So I would just, I would just ask that you think about that when you're making those choices. And then I would also want to say regarding bikes, there is an 80-foot right-of-way. And I know it's kind of hard to visualize what that means, but we have a lot of space on State Street. So I don't think it's ridiculous to assume that we can fit in 10 feet, 12 feet for bicycles. And like others have said, it's not done right now. And also I'd like to call to attention the difference between a throttled e-bike and a conventional bicycle, right? I think we can have some differences between all bikes or no bikes, because I don't think it's really fair to people who are trying to commute, trying to meet their daily needs, and are not, moving erratically, are not going 35 miles an hour on a super powered bike, right? I'm using a bike I got many years ago, and I got here on a bike, right, via State Street. Thank you.
The next speaker is Sharon Rich, followed by Mark Hepler.
Hi, my name is Sharon Rich, and I'm president of Friends of State Street. I'm going to cut mine really short so other people can get up here. But we advocate for a visionary approach to this process. We are neutral to the design, and we want what the community wants. While I'm encouraged by all the stakeholders bringing their diverse perspectives to this, there's a secret sauce to it all, and that's consensus building. And so we would really like it if you could advance this so that we can start doing what we're looking to do, is to help support the soft and hard costs to make this a realization. We have donors waiting, but what they're looking for is a consensus. That's when they will step forward. So we can start something soon. If you move it forward, then we get out of the weeds right now, and then we can talk about that. But we are ready to support it, and we are ready to continue to build that here in the community. We're not going anywhere. So thank you.
The next speaker is Mark C. Hepler, followed by Dennis Allen and Tristan Miller. The next speaker is Dennis Allen, followed by Tristan Miller.
I want to compliment this committee and all the city staff that have worked on this process, and certainly our local architects. Bringing them in has been a really strong step forward. And we have now a set of very forward-looking ideas and concepts that I think we can embrace. Our city has really outstanding DNA, and we have some issues to deal with, but what I see happening now is that we're building on the DNA that we have in this city. And that's a really important starting point, and not trying to start with a blank slate. The thing I really want to focus on is, like the last speaker said, is how we fund this. There's a lot of expensive things that are going to be happening as we endorse and get these approved and pushed into policy. And I think we need to start considering an enhanced infrastructure finance district. The state has enabling legislation that makes this possible. There's well over 20 of these now in the state, and they can fund a lot of things. They've kind of taken the place of what were the redevelopment agencies of the past that ended in 2011. But they're more flexible, and they're more innovative than the redevelopment districts were. And what these can help finance and support are things like upgrading utilities in the downtown core. They can start district infrastructure projects dealing with stormwater, dealing with condensate water that's been wastewater in the past. They can deal with microgrids so that we're more resilient to brownouts. They can finance affordable and workforce housing. They can finance public art. They can do childcare centers. They can do playgrounds, all kinds of things that I think are going to be a part of this looking forward. So we really need to get that in place so we can start making it all happen. Thank you.
The next speaker is Tristan Miller, followed by George Dewey Nix.
Hi, my name is Tristan Miller, and I'm here today speaking on behalf of Strongtown Santa Barbara and our 300 members.
First of all, thank you so much to all staff and all the committee members for your time on this. You've put in a ton of effort, and we really appreciate it and love how far this has come. We specifically really like the flat and flexible curbless design, but we think that that could be extended to the entirety of the corridor, from the 400 block to the 1300 block. It is beautiful. It would be the best for bringing people downtown, for being flexible for anybody to use for any purpose, a trolley, bicyclists, and also pedestrians, obviously, and then putting on events. I specifically want to call out the 400 block because I think that that one has been slightly more played down than the rest of the blocks, but it is the entrance from the waterfront to the promenade. I talked to the fire department earlier today here, and they mentioned that specifically they don't need the two-way configuration. They specifically have a fire department on Carrillo, and so they need to get from that Carrillo fire station to the waterfront and to the funk zone. That requires a one-way car infrastructure on the 400 block. I mean, ideally, I would like to see it car-free, but I understand this could be an acceptable compromise of we allow the fire trucks to go on the 400 block towards the waterfront, and then you have more space for pedestrians. The other thing that I didn't see addressed in any of this, we're looking at this, block by block, but one of the other things is the intersections. If we have a flat and flexible design, that flat and flexible design could be carried through the intersections so that cars crossing it are guests and they have to defer to the people on the promenade itself. And you could have it separated by bollards so that car traffic cannot enter the flat and flexible area. But I encourage you to think about the intersections as well. Specifically, can we do bump outs? Can we do curb extensions? How are we keeping everybody safe, both pedestrians and bicyclists? Thank you.
The next speaker is George Dewey Nix, followed by Richard Neal Yates.
Hello, my name is George Nix. I am also here on behalf of the 300 plus members of Strong Towns. I'd like to expand on what Tristan just said and add a few numbers. I know someone earlier mentioned that they would love to see a survey done of business owners. We did that. We did a random survey of over 40 businesses using a neutral series of questions and found that support for a car-free State Street stood at over 70%. And support for bringing cars back was less than 20. I'd also like to bring up another set of numbers, which was a recent report by, I believe, the Hayes Property Group that showed vacancy on State Street was lowest on the blocks that were open, that were closed to pedestrians. One of the blocks with the high, or closed to cars, sorry. The blocks with the highest vacancy rates were the ones that had been opened back to cars. And meanwhile, the 700 block, which is one of the blocks struggling the most, now has its lowest vacancy rate since 2017. And I'd also like to bring up the example of Carpentria Avenue down in Carp, mainly because of the way that bicycles have been a driver for business there. I think the way that we talk about bikes, that we have been talking about bikes, we've missed the fact that Santa Barbara has a truly very high mode share for bicycles for the US, and that a significant portion of the population, specifically on State Street, are using bicycles as their main form of transportation and are using that to bring themselves to businesses. Any sort of interruption in that will drive people away from the upper blocks of State Street, essentially cutting them off of a large portion of potential customers, and creating dangerous conflicts between bikes and vehicles on other streets. Thank you.
The next speaker is Richard Neal Yates, followed by Lily Heidger.
Good afternoon, members of the SSAC. That's not easy to say. Richard Yates from Opal Restaurant and Bar and from the Arts District Association. Thank you for your hard work on this very difficult and important project, and congratulations on reaching this milestone, a set of recommendations inclusive of the viewpoints of many different and important stakeholders. As someone who's supported the promenade since day one, some observations. First, I think it's incredibly important to preserve not only as a car-free space, but also a pedestrian-friendly space. Keeping it pedestrian-friendly is the key to the magical, messy, yes, but magical environment we observed in the first year of its existence, as everyone roamed freely, visiting stores, dining outdoors, with a community-enhancing and family-friendly vibe. Until the advent of the incredibly egregious e-bike behavior, people slowly felt less comfortable to come downtown, and that positive energy began to dissipate. What was needed then and needed now is meaningful regulation of this behavior. So that's something that didn't work, needs to be fixed, and doing so would be a first step towards giving the promenade a fair chance to show what it can do with proper support. In my view, as well as that of others working in this area, that the promenade didn't get a fair shake. I'm going to looking at my timer, I'm going to shortcut some of what I was going to say and switch over to outdoor dining. And I would like to say, in regards to the future of it, many of the proposals put forward here would work for many of us, including having outdoor dining come off the storefronts. But what about now? Given the city's dire financial condition and infrastructure challenges that some of these proposals pose, how long before they could become reality? 3, 4, or 5 more years? What I think missing here is a thoughtful proposal for the interim that would allow the vibrancy of outdoor dining to continue. Unless the city can quickly change street configurations in significant ways, parklets or other approved dining structures need to be the bridge to that more perfect future that some of these proposals would create. So I would ask that you consider that, as we believe the creation of a successful city-supported promenade would set Santa Barbara apart as a model California city. And we urge you to flesh out the role of the 1300 block as well, which has been left kind of in limbo here a little bit. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Lily Heidegger, followed by Joanna Kaufman.
Hi there. Thank you all so much for your hard work. I'll try to keep this brief. I'm a local who commutes primarily by bike, and State Street is a safe haven for me and many others. I support a car-free, curbless design for State Street for the entirety of the promenade from the 400 to the 1300 block, with spaces for both bikes and pedestrians. And I even want to push back on the rhetoric that State Street is currently closed, because in my mind, it's more open than it ever has been. State Street is a really vital part of the city's active transportation infrastructure, offering access not only to businesses and restaurants on State Street, but also adjacent streets as well, and serves as a thoroughfare to allow people to get all across downtown. I also want to echo the concerns around unsafe bike behaviors and emphasize that traffic calming measures exist for bikes as well, and that there are many options to keep bikes on State Street while allowing for safe areas for pedestrians. State Street ultimately provides an incredible opportunity to build a more robust downtown with the integration of more housing, allowing for people to live and spend money and to work where they live. Ultimately, this is an opportunity to build a more equitable downtown that's accessible for all different types of people who commute by different modes, and to build a downtown that is people-centered and human scale. Thank you.
The next speaker is Joanna Kaufman, followed by Joshua Ellis.
Hi. Echo what everyone says. Thank you so much for your work on this very important project. And I think this is really timely because we're coming up to the 100-year anniversary of the earthquake, which was so transformative for our city. I support a flat and curbless design for the entirety of the Paseo from the 1400 to the 1300 block, because it actually maintains flexibility to support different treatments. Once curbs are introduced, that eliminates possibilities. I'd like to see more facts for the people that want cars to return. I want to see facts that directly connect the presence of cars to economic development, because I certainly haven't found any in the research that I've done. I believe that reintroducing cars anywhere on State Street will kill the placemaking that is being cultivated. There's especially vibrant social life on the 1100 and 500 blocks in particular that would be gone once cars are reintroduced. The downtown economy was stressed before State Street became people-focused. And best practice in research shows that bicycle and pedestrian-friendly streets are a means to support economic development. From what I found, the true culprits that have hurt our downtown is an overabundance of retail space, lack of housing, lack of residents serving retail, lack of local retail, and homelessness. A street with cars doesn't solve any of this. In fact, from what I remember, when cars were on State Street, if you were local, there was no good reason to drive down State Street if you're trying to get somewhere. I submitted a letter to the SSAC with additional research about factors for economic decline, so I hope you take a look at it if you haven't already. Lastly, if we can't have a car-free downtown, what value statement does that make? Will it really uplift our local economy? A majority of our community is clear from surveys that have occurred that they enjoy the benefits of a car-free environment. We desperately crave space for public life. And on a public note, I ride a cargo bike with my 6-year-old on State Street more than once a week, multiple times a week. I want him to know that if he needs to go somewhere, he doesn't have to get into a car and drive somewhere. So I think it's really important that everyone that lives within the proximity of downtown has that as a safe option, so they learn, because we need that. That supports a lot of other policies and changes our city wants to happen, and I see this directly related to these choices that are being made downtown. Thank you.
The next speaker is Joshua Ellis, followed by Bob Stout. The next speaker is Bob Stout, followed by Brian Mann.
Hi, thank you for your work and your support. Seen a lot of it over the last year and a half. Tess Harris, I'm glad you're here or not here. Here, and congratulations. And I think Megan's daughter ought to be on the next incarnation of this committee. So my time is fleeting. I know you want specifics. I've had 6 businesses on State Street or a block off. I was in the last 40 years. I spend 6 to 10 hours a day on State Street, downtown. My wife walks to the bank, hopefully to the bank every day. And a few specifics. I don't want to get too NIMBY. I'm off the 600 block, but I've been downtown a long time. Because there's a lot of liquor licenses that probably won't move because it's too difficult to move them. Those are located primarily in the 500 block, 400, 500, 600 block, and I would say also the 1200 block. So consider that those businesses are going to be there, just like I think the banks are always going to be banks. So I think you're taking that into account, and I think you should really plan accordingly. I think the 400 block should be the first thing we raise money for and get done, because it's the gateway. You've said that word a few times. I think the 5 and the 6 should definitely not have cars. I think it should capitalize on what's already successful, which is outdoor dining. For those of us who have been out recently in the sun, things have really changed. We had a terrible winter, bad weather, and like little seeds, now all of a sudden downtown's sort of sprouting. There's very little vacancy in the 500 block where there's no large banks, where there's a lot of small retail, and where there's restaurants, bars, breweries, etc. I feel bad for some of the other blocks. They're really slow. I think the community center, the Grand Paseo was a great idea. I think it's maybe too soon to plan on that. I wish once Paseo Nuevo housing got going and De La Guerra Plaza, I think that's a good future plan, and that's what you're doing. I just don't think it's going to come to fruition real soon, as I do think the 5 and 6. I'm a big champion of the 1200 block. I was very disappointed to see 3 of the businesses lose their outdoor dining. I had a great time going to the Arlington, going to the theaters, eating at Sama Sama, going to Good Lion, and that block kind of got wiped out. So I'm sorry to see that. My original plan 4 years ago, or my position, was to pitch the 500 block and the 1200 block, and everybody liked that. And the next morning, Paul Casey said, let's do the whole thing because it's COVID. So too much history. Thanks for your time. Thank you for your work.
The next speaker is Brian Mann, followed by Jorge Baez.
Hello. Hello. If you have a low-cut filter on the PA, if you put that in, we won't hear all the thumps. I'm a musician, so excuse me. I haven't heard too much from the arts. We're talking about the Arts District, so I thought I'd chime in. the overall plan is wonderful. My wife said, bring up the word joy. And I think that's why we're here. We have a vision, a dream for this city, and you're the dreamers, and you showed up. So first I want to thank all the people that know about things like money and raising money from the state, and people that know about architecture and transportation and ADA and all that. I know a little bit about magic and joy. That's my business. And I think we can have this magic here. I think it's ephemeral. It's airy-fairy, okay? But it's real because you feel it when you dream of what State Street can be. And don't denigrate that idea of joy and magic, because that's what we have here in Santa Barbara, and that's why all these amazing, intelligent, hardworking people are here. That's why you're here. You look outside and see that ocean. You're here because of the beauty here, what we've inherited as Santa Barbarans. Don't forget about the Arlington, though, 1300 block. I'm going to be the 1300 block guy because we do have a dangerous situation with no stop sign now at Arlington Avenue. My wife was almost hit by a car there, speeding through there. There's confusion now because of putting cars back in the 13 and 1200 block. There's a lot of confusion. I know I have just a minute here, but Sola Street, the fire department's need for two-way traffic on the 1300 block is because of a mistake. Sola Street is a mistake, okay? It's a hard thing to accept, but it needs to be taken out and put back, okay? Solving the fire department's problem.
Could you wrap up, please? We gotta
Thank
get-
you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Jorge Baez, followed by Heather Deutsch.
Hello, Jorge Baez here, representing the newly formed local group of A Better Way, Santa Barbara, in the arm of Citizens Advisory Council, which is a group of concerned citizens dreaming and reimagining ways in we can help the community just be a more thriving, resilient community. Being Santa Barbara, the cradle of the Earth Day, I think we have a perfect opportunity. It's a big task and a big responsibility, but also an historic moment that we can utilize to serve as a beacon of what a thriving, resilient community can be. We work with a multidisciplinary approach to research, dream, and bring into existence sustainable solutions for a better planet. We cannot stay on the sidelines of climate change anymore or leave it for future generations. We recognize that the problem is global and we're here to address it locally. The time has always been now. And specifically, being architect, permaculture, urbanist, hospitality, and a citizen of Santa Barbara, we summarize some concepts here, such as the Dutch concept of autoluv, translated in English to nearly car-free, which allows all sort of mobility and doesn't exclude emergency vehicles. This is with different cities that have adopted successfully and implemented this through decades, such as Amsterdam in the Netherlands, Copenhagen in Denmark, Ghent in Belgium, also Oslo in Norway, Pontevedra and Spain, and such others. With different tools such as the flat curbless design or raised crossings, continuous sidewalks, mid-block curbs, speed bumps, humps, and cautions. Some of these benefits being increased foot traffic, improved shopping experience, boost in sales, increased property values, noise reduction, improved air quality, and increased pedestrian safety. Overall, pedestrianizing streets in front of stores can contribute to a thriving retail environment, attract more customers, and improve the overall economic vitality of an area. Another important aspect of this revitalizing State Street, addressing the high number of vacancies. Although a difficult task, it's also an opportunity to reimagine more community-oriented businesses that respond with a modern approach to the needs of tourists, shoppers, diners, and locals alike. Additionally, the use of sustainable materials in the implementation of our city center, such as permeable concrete, earth building techniques such as Adobe or Ramet Earth, hemp-based or other carbon-negative building materials, eco-aggregates, the use of local flora, and water harvesting.
You're gonna have to wrap
as an
up, please.
examples.
I'm sorry.
Thank you so much.
The next speaker is Heather Deutsch, followed by Ian Bauke and Hannah Cohen.
Thank you. I'll probably have to bring this down. There we go. Thank you so much. Thank you for all your hard work. My name is Heather Deutsch, Executive Director of MOVE Santa Barbara County. I am speaking on behalf of our tens of thousands of members and supporters who could not be here today because they work or have children or any variety of tasks, which makes it possible for them to come to and comment at a meeting held at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday. So I just want to make that point. In terms of this plan, we need to think about this plan related to the long-term future of Santa Barbara, not in response to the immediate conflicts which occur when there's change. Major changes are coming. Retail has moved to the internet. We have climate change, which is here. We need to address housing, ideally bringing housing downtown. So what does all this mean? There are many beautiful elements to this plan, but there's a lot of details that are missing. And one of the things that we've seen today is how do these modes, especially as has been highlighted here, how do they come together at these intersections? How do they separate? Where will the bikes go? When you ban the bikes from certain blocks, where are they supposed to go? As you've heard, this is a major important corridor for a number of people. And you've also heard about curbs. It has been noted that curbs are required when there are cars on a corridor. That is not correct. So what you could do is you could say, look, how all these modes come together is still in flux. We can adopt a curbless street with a lot of the amazing elements that have been brought by volunteers in the AIA, but you don't need to decide in order to move this project forward that you need to know what modes are in each section and to designate certain areas for them now. What we have today on State Street is amazing and highlights how Santa Barbara can be a leader in innovative ideas and actions. We can all agree that it is not perfect. So let's keep, as we have done, making minor tweaks, assessing their effects until we find an optimum solution. We don't need to bring back cars to do this, but there's a lot of beautiful things that we need to try out before adopting something that is going to be here, for decades to come. Thank you.
The next speaker is Ian Bauke, followed by Hannah Cohen, and we have one raised hand online.
Amen to all that. Hello, my name is Ian Bauke. First, I want to thank you all for your public service. It does not go unappreciated. I was born and raised here in the city of Santa Barbara. I've seen State Street through a lot of different eyes as a little kid, as a teenager, hanging out with friends, going down to the wharf, as a visitor from college, as a tour guide, as a restaurant worker on the 400 block, as a member of the transportation committee, and now finally, I'm glad to say, as a Santa Barbara local who's moved back here permanently full-time to build a life here with my girlfriend Hannah and I. And so I'm really invested in seeing this master plan not represent a calculation of what's preferable to achieve, but the dream of the community. What do we want our downtown to look like? I'm just one person with one story, but I can say emphatically from my experience that State Street is more vibrant, attractive, peaceful, joyful post-COVID than it ever was in my lifetime. Okay. The sole reason I think that's true, and I think it's obvious from our experience, is because it's car-free. Putting car traffic onto any block is to sacrifice it to a lesser fate by sheer contrast. Ms. Kaufman's letter proves why that's true on the economic front as well. I urge you to support the Grand Paseo concept, but make it confident, make it coherent, make it consistent from the 400 block gateway to a new gateway at the Arlington Theater on the 1300 block. I only experience State Street as a pedestrian. I want a pedestrian-centered experience. But you have 80 feet, and I think we can make a space that's inclusive for all. I'll never forget sitting in a parklet, having a beer with friends, and a guy rides by on his bike with a parrot on his shoulder. Those are the moments of joy we have today with this inclusive space, and we wouldn't have if there was a car there instead. Bikes and other really important accessibility mobility devices and public transit can and should be incorporated into this design. I provided you all with probably too many AI sketches that showcase possible ways you can do that. I'll wrap up by just saying, what I want from you guys today, having followed this process for like 4 years, is to take a direction, make a clear decision as decision makers about the future of cars on State Street. I think myself and the majority of other locals would be forever grateful if you permanently ban private cars from the 400 to 1300 blocks. And I'll just close by saying, we do not need to copy Santa Monica. We don't need to be Boulder. We are Santa Barbara. We can set the example, and this master plan should set the example. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Hannah Cohen.
Hello, my name is Hannah Cohen, and I just moved to Santa Barbara after having visited many times. One of the things that drew me into this city is the peacefulness and joy of walking down the full length of State Street Promenade. For the sake of the people, the environment, and the economy, we need to keep State Street closed to cars and open to pedestrians, bicycles, and transit from the 400 to 1300 blocks with a flat, curbless design. In a city with such beautiful weather and views, we need to take advantage of our ability to host outdoor third spaces for residents and visitors. For a city that values its local and global environment, we can't just preach it, we have to act on it. By providing pedestrians and bicyclists with a safe, low-stress environment to travel, shop, and eat on, we are promoting low and zero emissions transportation in our city. Closing the entire length of the 400 to 1300 block to cars and keeping it open to pedestrians, bicyclists, and transit is the obvious best choice for our people, our environment, and our local economy. We can't call something a grand paseo if you have cars going through it. Thank you to the committee members for listening and making the decisions that is best for our community.
Thank you.
We have one raised hand online. Trevor Block, I'll unmute you, and you can speak. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I appreciate the work put into these plans. I love the ideas for a flat and curbless design to increase pedestrian walkability, but I still have issue with the areas where you proposed reopening vehicle traffic, even if it's one way. Opening this up to vehicle traffic in any capacity, especially that which changes configuration, is only asking for disaster at the hands of distracted or drunk drivers. Cars are simply unnecessary on State Street. Any economic benefit from reopening is drastically overstated and comes at the expense of a cultural value that is posed by this pedestrian haven. The idea of allowing for, drop-offs or drop-off zones or whatever it was referred to before operates around the assumption that you should be able to exit your vehicle 10 feet away from your destination so you don't actually have to walk anywhere or interact with anyone. Here's my hot take. Just walk a block. Walk a block. My 9-year-old and 3-year-old walked over 4 miles this last weekend to get from where we parked to the Solstice Festival and the farmers market. If they can do this, surely adults can walk to their destinations on State Street. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our public comment. I will close the public comment officially. That will essentially take us to a point right now, and I think we're going to continue the meeting. The people who did have to leave do want to basically be part of the discussion and vote. So I will be looking right now for a motion to continue this meeting to a future date. Who did it? John Bauke? Is there a second? Second by Hillary. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, there is one opposition to that particular motion. Okay, we will stand adjourned until that meeting, that next meeting. Thank you all for your participation today. Thank you, staff, for your assistance. And thanks to the public for showing up and being part of this decision-making. Thank you all. Have a good evening.